Alright, good afternoon everyone. Sorry for making this 2 hours earlier than it was going to be. End up with a scheduling conflict this morning. And about 10 or 11 o'clock I went, oh no, I've got to, excuse me, allergies. Get ready for Garden Gab, and it's at 3 o'clock. I'm going to move you over just a little bit here. And totally forgot that it was at 3 o'clock today. So I upped it to 1. So you may be watching this after it gets posted instead of during, but that's okay. Today is February the 12th. March 5th in 3 weeks is when we're going to start watching start planting our seeds. So we have to take time and get ready for that. We've already picked what seeds we're going to grow this year. This is our box of seeds here. Okay, and they're broken up by varieties instead of, one year I did it by planting dates, and that got really hard to keep straight. So I sorted them by type. Before you start thumbing through the catalogs, there's some things you need to consider when it comes to buying your seeds or obtaining them from somewheres. First off, don't get tied up too much in the hybrid or heirloom varieties. An heirloom is something that has grown the same way for 50 years or more, and people get hung up on, oh, it has to be an heirloom, I can't grow a hybrid, I can't grow a hybrid. The downside with growing a hybrid is you end up with something that if you save the seed from it, let's say you get a hybrid tomato and you save the seeds from those tomatoes and then you try to plant them again next year. Well, next year they might be a little bit different. Heirlooms will be the same. That's really the only difference between the two of them. I have no problem growing hybrids. I've grown Campari tomatoes. Those have been the same for me all the time. I've grown white cherry. I've grown clementine, orange. I've, alpacas, which are the size of a pepper. It really depends what you need to first decide on what you want to do with your produce. So if you want to, let's say you just want to make a salsa garden, a small 4x4 salsa garden, you're just starting, it's your first year, you're not sure what if you're going to enjoy gardening, if it's going to be something you're going to take further. So you have a small 4x4 bed, or you're going to be growing in containers. So if you're going to be doing, let's say, a salsa garden, you need to do your cilantro, your peppers, your tomatoes, your onions. You can fit them all in a 4x4 bed. You can fit a lot of that in 5-gallon buckets. You could use, we've used metal roasting pans before. And yes, we're actually going to be, our raised boxes, the 2-foot by 4-foot that we have, we're going to be making into a salad garden this year. Because we're going to be adding at least 5, if not 8 more beds on our property. All 4-foot by 8-foot. And so we're going to be planting everything that we would put into a salad into our boxes. So we're going to have lettuce in there, we're going to have kale, we're going to have radishes, we're going to have some carrots, we may put some beets in there along with beets in the bed. And so those are things that we're planning now, because in March 5th, some of those things need 12 weeks to before our first frost date, before they go on the ground. So if we plant on March 5th, they'll go outside the last week, probably around the 22nd of May, and they'll go on the ground just after the 1st of June, because normally we have a frost on the 1st of June. So we normally do 60 tomatoes. This year we're going to be doing probably 70 or 75 tomato plants, because we are going to have, like I said, we're adding 5 more beds. So it gives me more varieties, and when it comes to tomatoes, you need to decide, do I want to do a determinate type, which is one that grows to its height, bushes out, plant puts all of its tomatoes on, they all ripen, and then it dies. Okay, it's not going to produce any more. If they're indeterminate, you can pull one off and it'll grow another one. So those we single stem, and we'll show you that when they go out in the garden, that you have just a vine that goes up, a rope or a string, and as you harvest, it keeps producing more and more and more, and those will produce all the way through the season. So you need to determine that. When it comes to cucumbers, you need to decide, do I have the room for vines to go everywhere? Am I going to put them up a pole? Am I going to put them up a trellis? Am I going to use them for pickling? Am I going to use them for salad? You can get bush type pickling cucumbers that they produce a small bush and you just harvest off there. You don't get the vines. I know a lot of people that have grown those. They love them. I've never done it. I've always done the vine type because we have multiple trellises. You have to decide for carrots. Do you want small carrots? Do you want colored carrots? Do you want ones that they call baseball carrots, which would be your Danvers carrots? They grow probably about that big around and that long. Do you have the room for that? So those are things you need to do before you sit down and determine how much space you're gonna apply to this. Now we currently have 16 beds. We have 2 grow tables and 2 elevated beds. So we've decided to add these 5, 6, or 8 gardens, and it's going to increase what we're going to grow, because we're going to be growing broccoli this year. We're going to be growing, we're moving our pumpkins away from our squash. We're moving our cucumbers away from them, because things that are in the same family can cross-pollinate. So we've ended up with some funky looking pickling cucumbers that look more like a squash. We've ended up with squash that look, you try to plant a delicata and you end up getting a delicata mixed with a butternut. So we're going to be planting those away from each other so we don't get that cross-pollination again this year. So we have picked out our seeds. Let me just show you some of my favorites here. So the one that I've always had a hard time growing is onions. Anything from the onion family: garlic, leeks, onions. They don't get very big. So I'm going to try to do things a little differently this year. So I'm going to be planting from Johnny's the Alyssa Craig, which is a competition onion. It is a yellow onion. This was roughly a pack of about 1,000 seeds. They take 110 days to maturity. However, these can go out in the ground in May instead of June, because they can take the cold, and we can hoop our beds like you saw when we did the end of the season cleanup of our beds with all the metal hoops that we can put over them. So we can put them out 1st of May, last week of April, so we can get those extra days, because we only have 103 growing days. And they normally start to bulb right around the summer solstice, when the days start getting shorter. Those are onions that grow to about a 3 pound, between 2 and 3 pounds. So we pickle ours, we use them in our hot sauce, we use them in our marinara. We make up vacuum seal bags of peppers and onions. We have a crate of onions that we keep grabbing from when we need something for, say, a salad instead of sauteing for frozen. So we're going to be growing a lot of these. These are not a sweet onion. They're actually kind of middle of the road. They'll store for 3 to 6 months. So we'll be pickling a lot of them. We're probably going to be planting maybe 3 to a cell, and we'll talk about cells next week. And we're going to be planting 36 cells. That's 108 onions. At 3 pounds a piece, that's a lot of onions. I'm actually expecting only about 1.5 pounds a piece. So we get about 150 pounds, which will do us until next growing seasons are ready. So echinacea, which you saw me plant last week, I have more to plant this week. This is stuff we harvested from our own echinacea. I also have a package around here with about 4,000 in it that I bought for Jenny. Seeds that we saved from our peppers that we bought to make our county moose sauce. These are sweet bell peppers. Instead of growing as many hot peppers as we have been, because we have an abundance of them, pickled, frozen, we're going to be doing more sweets this year for our marineras, stuff like that, for our stir fries, sautés. Instead of buying our sweet peppers by the 25-pound case, we're planning on harvesting them all. So there's going to be a lot of pepper plants. We'll probably do about 50 sweet peppers. You know, our beans. So we go through and we picked all of the beans that we're going to do. We have a green bean, and this one is a 3-color blend of yellow, green, and purple. We'll be doing those. We have various types of peppers. But we sat down and thought about the food that we eat the most of. And that's what we're really looking for. So when you start looking at catalogs, catalogs are nice and they show pretty pictures of everything. Okay. They show lots of different things for you, you know, different fun sunflowers, but you need to determine if that's something you're going to eat. Like if you're not a big squash eater, don't plant squash. If you want to experiment, Baker Creek is a great way to experiment, because I'm trying to find some of the fun stuff they have. Like they have Chinese radishes, they have watermelon radishes, they have different types of carrots. They have, you know, black peppers. They have a lot of Asian stuff. If it's not something you eat a lot of, only contribute 10% of your garden to what you're growing. If you're allergic to onions, don't plant onions. Don't plant anything from the onion family. If you don't eat eggplant, well, then it's kind of foolish to plant eggplant. Corn. Jenny's allergic to corn byproducts, which I mentioned on our website. I've mentioned it on our Facebook page. So we don't grow a whole lot of corn. We'll actually get, she can eat corn that hasn't been processed, but if it's corn syrup, corn starch, corn flour, stuff like that, popcorn she can do. Anything that's been modified, she can't. So we stay away from things that like that. We're not big on Brussels sprouts. We don't plant a lot of Brussels sprouts. We have grown them before, and they are delicious. You know, the melons, we've had a really hard time growing. So this is probably going to be the last year I try to grow melons. I've been trying to grow yellow watermelons for 3 years now. And there are just some things that are just, for me, are hard to grow. But that isn't going to stop me from growing them. Basil, we use a lot of basil. I bought our seeds from Johnny's two winters ago. They had a huge sale on them. And I bought like 19,000 basil seeds. I bought 100,000 dill. We use a lot of dill for pickles. We use a lot of oregano and parsley and thyme in our marinara. So I'm going to be doing a lot of those. So I buy those in the bigger packs when they're on sale. Garden supply houses always have sales on seeds pretty much all the time. If you go on the website on Johnny's and you hit the menu over to the right, I think it is, and you go down to sale, and then you can select sale of flowers, sale of vegetables, certain things that are on sale. You can buy the bigger packs, and if you look on the back of a pack of seeds, Johnny's isn't on the back. I think it's on the front. They give an expiration date. That just because it has an expiration date, that's something the FDA makes them do. That doesn't mean that you can't use them past that date. It just means that your germination rate is going to be a little bit lower, so you may have to plant more. So that's something to consider too. You know, are you going to be growing something you can save seeds from that you can grow from year to year, or are you going to have to buy more? Another thing is, when it comes to actually planting them, one of the best resources we have here is the whole seed catalog, and this is something we got from Baker Creek, and it talks about all their products, and it goes into detail on them. Gives you a little bit of history about them. One of the fun things we're going to try to grow this year that we've never done. I've got the seeds from last year. I love sunflowers, and our bees love sunflowers. And the first year we grew the rainbow sunflowers, the multi-packs, the bees were all over them. It was insane how much we got. So they have black sunflowers, and I have the seeds for these that we're going to be trying to grow. And if we do, we'll save seeds from just one head. We can easily save, I think it's something like 2,500 seeds off one head, and then we'll give the rest to the animals. We'll leave the sunflowers up for the bees as long as possible. So when it gets into peppers, they have, the Biquino yellows, and those grew really well for us last year. We like, do you like shelling peas, or do you like, ones that you eat in the pod? That's something to look at. Purple peas, only the shell is purple. Okay, the inside is green. A lot of purple produce, such as green beans, peas, things of that nature, when you cook them, they go green. So, that's also something to think about. Do you want, if you're going for fun just to show, but then you're going to can them, then you're going to lose the green. So just grow green ones. It's not going to be as extravagant on the vine, but it's going to, you're going to end up with the same thing in the end. So when it comes to where to plant these, okay, you can plant, let's say you're going to do containers and you want to do 5-gallon buckets. So you can grow heads of lettuce in a 2-gallon bucket. You can grow peppers, 2 peppers, or 1 tomato in a 5-gallon bucket. You can grow 1 cucumber in a 5-gallon bucket. You can actually get away with a 2-gallon if you need to. You can use fabric bags that are like 5, 7, 10, 20 gallons. Last year, if you watched our 3rd or 4th Garden Gab, we grew carrots in a 20-gallon bucket that's actually kind of meant more for like laundry. It has rope handles on it, and they're blue. We got some holes in it, filled it full of soil for our carrots. I've got 4 of them. We're going to use them to grow carrots again this year. We're going to be growing some peppers in pots. We're going to be growing lettuce in pots, radishes. I've got window boxes, the 3-foot wide window boxes that we can plant radishes in. We've got hay racks for flowers where you can do edible flowers in. Don't get too hooked up on companion planting. A lot of people say that, if you plant beans or peas next to things that's going to put nitrogen in the soil. Well, it doesn't. Okay, you end up with little nodules on your beans or your peas on the roots that store nitrogen, but then when the plant needs it, it goes ahead and releases it to the plant. So it's not really going to fix the nitrogen in your soil too much. You can plant your peas or your pole beans around things like corn, and they'll climb up the corn. You can plant them among sunflowers. And I tend to put flowers in our garden or around it because it draws pollinators in. And if you need a way to get pollinators in, well, then sunflowers are great. Kong sunflowers will bring a lot of pollinators in. They grow 13 feet tall. The heads on them are that big, and they grow something like 5,000 seeds. So you're going to get a lot of pollinators in your garden. Put herbs amongst your tomatoes. Basil and tomatoes, when you single stem your tomatoes, do really well together. Onions do great next to tomatoes. Grow dill amongst your tomatoes. It'll keep the tomato hornworm away. If you're having a problem with aphids, plant nasturtiums outside your garden, and the aphids love nasturtiums, and they'll go to the nasturtiums instead of your tomatoes, your peas, your cucumbers. If you're going to be growing in an area that gets a lot of rain, you have to consider what you're going to be growing for your squashes, your pumpkins, your cucumbers, because they're susceptible to the rain and they get a lot of powdery mildew. So that's something you're going to have to treat for. So if you're in a high rain area that gets that you don't get a whole lot of windy days that'll dry out your garden and you're going to end up with a lot of powdery mildew, well then maybe that's something you can grow in a container and maybe kind of shade it or cover it so it doesn't get as much rain on it, so you don't have to deal with powdery mildew. So these are all just some things to consider. You can grow some things in smaller pots. We've done peppers in 1 gallon pots. We have done, you can get small container cherry tomatoes that only get about 18 inches tall, and they're a small bush, and they go great in a 12-inch pot. A lot of your seeds will say on them, especially if you get like Burpee or Fairy Morse, they'll have a little icon up in the corner, like over here, that says grows well in a 12-inch pot or an 8-inch pot. So if you're doing something on a patio or you're doing something on a balcony that you don't have a whole lot of room, those are things you need to look for too. So sit down with a pen and paper, decide on what was the very first thing you planted and in what. We planted 3 cherry tomatoes. No, was it 3 cherry tomatoes, Jen? I think it was 3 cherry tomatoes in a 7-gallon pot, and then we did a jalapeno in a coconut coir hanging basket by itself.
Then basil, oregano, and thyme.
Yeah, we did basil, oregano, and thyme in small containers. And that was before anything went in the ground. That was just hanging on our back deck by the grill. So while we were out there, we could, either snack on cherry tomatoes, we could grab stuff for whatever we're cooking, grabbing peppers. I did forget to mention that when it comes to tomatoes, when you do decide what you're going to grow, the Campari tomatoes, your cocktail tomatoes are great for salsas. But if you're going to do a marinara, you're going to want a paste tomato, such as the Amish paste or the San Marzano. And we do about 32 San Marzano plants every year. And we still have some in the freezer for marinara that we make batches of marinara throughout the year to get us for the year. Last year it was like 8 gallons we did. It was crazy. So when you're picking tomatoes, pick something that your beefsteaks go for burgers, your cocktail ones go for salsas, and your grape tomatoes go for salads, but your paste tomatoes go for your marinaras, things like that. So something to consider. So we pretty much know what we're growing and in what bed and when. I really wish lumber prices were a little bit lower than what they are, but it is what it is. So yeah, we're going to be building beds this spring, probably in March. I'll take you out there with me, and that might be a recorded one to so you don't have to watch me for an hour building one bed. So sit down, decide with a pen and paper what you want to grow, what you want to make, and then you can decide what you're going to plant. And then once that happens, you need to determine if it's stuff that has to be grown inside. So next week we're going to talk about choosing your stuff to grow in and what lights to use. We're going to actually be up in the grow room for that. We're going to be showing you the chrome racks, the lights we use. Dispel some myths about using those lights. Yes, Jenny loves flowers. Her echinacea and snapdragons are her 2 weaknesses. And a few sunflowers because of her stepmother. So take some time. You got a week to think about it. Next Saturday we'll be doing another Garden Gab from the Grow Room. That will be episode 3. So we hope to see you there, and you guys have a great day.